The stars had never seemed so close. Captain Daniel Harper stood on the bridge of the Unity's Dawn, watching the blue light of hyperspace flow past the windows like water. His ship was 3 weeks into a journey that would take them to the edge of known space, to meet with aliens that humanity had only spoken to through video calls and messages. It was the year 2287, and humans had finally done it. They had built engines that could move faster than light. They had reached the stars, and more importantly, they had been invited to join the Galactic Council, a group of 12 alien species that had been living in peace for over 3,000 years. Daniel was 42 years old, with gray starting to show in his dark hair. He had been in space for 20 years, but nothing in his career had prepared him for this moment. His crew was the first human team to actually visit an alien homeworld in person. They were making history with every jump through hyperspace. "Captain will be dropping out of hyperspace in 10 minutes, said Lieutenant Amy Peterson from her station. She was 28, sharp as a knife and the best tactical officer Daniel had ever worked with. Her fingers moved across her console, checking and rechecking their coordinates. "Thank you, Amy. Everyone ready?" Daniel looked around the bridge. His crew nodded back at him. Commander Lisa Grant, his second-in-command, stood near the navigation station. She was a tall woman in her mid-30s, calm under pressure, and Daniel trusted her completely. "All departments report ready, Captain. We're as prepared as we can be." Dr. Vincent Cole, the chief science officer, was practically bouncing in his seat with excitement. The young scientist, barely 30 years old, had spent his entire life dreaming of meeting aliens. Now his dream was coming true. "The Crevens are an insectoid species," he said, not for the first time. "They have a hive structure led by a queen. Their technology is more advanced than ours in biotechnology, but we're ahead in computer systems." Daniel smiled. Vincent had been giving them facts about the Crevens for 3 weeks straight. "We know, Vincent. You've briefed us well." The ship shuddered slightly as it began to slow down. The blue light outside the windows started to fade, and suddenly the stars were back. Real stars, not the strange lights of hyperspace, and there, hanging in the darkness ahead of them, was a green and brown planet. "Welcome to the Creven system," Amy said quietly. Daniel's communicator beeped. "Captain Harper, this is Ambassador John Miller from Harmony Prime. Do you read me?" "Loud and clear, Ambassador," Daniel replied. John Miller was the human representative at the Galactic Council's central station. He was the one who had arranged this whole mission. "Good luck down there, Captain. Remember, we're trying to make friends. The Crevens are offering us mining rights and biotechnology in exchange for our farming methods and entertainment programs. It's a good deal, and the Council is watching to see how we handle this." "Understood, sir. We'll make a good impression." The conversation ended, and Daniel looked at his crew. "Take us into orbit nice and slow. Let's not spook anyone." The Unity's Dawn moved toward the planet. As they got closer, Amy's station started beeping. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships in orbit. They're Creven vessels matching the profiles we were given. They're not powering weapons or shields. Looks like a peaceful welcome." "Good. Open a channel." A face appeared on the main screen. At least Daniel thought it was a face. The Creven looked like a massive insect, with compound eyes that seemed to shimmer with different colors. Its mandibles clicked as it spoke, and the computer translated its words into English. "Human Vessel Unity's Dawn, you are welcome in our system. The Hive Queen Zira invites you to land at the primary spaceport. We are honored to meet you in person." Daniel stood up straight. "Thank you. We are honored to be here. We come in peace and friendship." The Creven's mandibles clicked again, which the computer said was similar to a smile. "Then let us begin a new chapter of cooperation between our species." The next few days were busy. Daniel and his crew met with Creven officials, toured their cities, and began the process of negotiating trade agreements. The Crevens were polite and welcoming. Their queen, Zira, was particularly friendly during their formal meeting. She spoke of lasting peace and mutual benefit, but something was bothering Commander Lisa Grant. On their 4th day on the planet, she pulled Daniel aside in their quarters at the Creven Diplomatic Building. "Captain, I've been reviewing the reports from our scout ships," she said, her voice low. "Commander Greg Palmer sent us data before we arrived. His team has been watching Creven space for the past month." "And?" Daniel asked. "They're building a lot of military ships. I mean a lot. Way more than they should need for defense. Palmer counted 20 new battleships under construction in just one system, and those are just the ones his team could see." Daniel frowned. "Did you report this to Ambassador Miller?" "I did. He said the council told him to ignore it. Apparently, the council's philosophy is that every species has the right to maintain their own military. They don't interfere with internal affairs. The council has kept peace for 3,000 years, Lisa. They must know what they're doing. Maybe, Lisa said, but she didn't sound convinced. But Palmer also noted that the Krevans are moving fleets toward their border with our space. That doesn't feel like peaceful behavior to me. Daniel wanted to agree with her, but he also knew that humans were the newcomers here. They had only been part of the galactic community for 2 years. Maybe they just didn't understand how things worked yet. The council had been maintaining peace since before humans had even invented the wheel. Keep monitoring the situation, he finally said. But we're here to build bridges, not burn them. The council knows what they're doing. Lisa nodded, but Daniel could see the doubt in her eyes. Meanwhile, far away on Harmony Prime, the massive space station that served as the council's headquarters, Ambassador John Miller was having his own concerns. He sat in his office with his aide, Kelly Brooks, reviewing reports. Kelly was 26, smart, and had an eye for details that often caught things others missed. Sir, I've been looking at the Krevan voting patterns in the council over the past year. They've been pushing for regulations that would limit how fast new species can build military vessels. That's aimed at us, John said. We're the only new species. Right, but here's the weird part. They're building their own military at a record pace. Why would they want to limit us but not themselves? John leaned back in his chair. He had been a diplomat for 20 years, serving Earth in various capacities before becoming the ambassador to the Galactic Council. He had learned to trust his instincts, and right now his instincts were telling him something was wrong. But what could he do? The council operated on consensus and trust. They had been doing so for thousands of years. If he started making accusations without proof, he would damage humanity's reputation before they had even established themselves. Keep digging, he told Kelly. Quietly. Don't let the other species know we're suspicious. Back on the Krevan homeworld, the negotiations continued. Dr. Vincent Cole was thrilled with the biotechnology the Krevans were sharing. Amy Peterson helped coordinate the data transfers. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. Too perfectly, Lisa thought. But she kept her concerns to herself and continued to smile at their hosts. 3 weeks later, Captain Daniel Harper and his crew prepared to leave the Krevan homeworld. The treaties had been signed. The trade agreements were in place. By all accounts, the mission had been a complete success. As the Unity's Dawn lifted off from the planet and headed back toward human space, Daniel felt proud. They had done their job well. Humanity was making friends among the stars. He had no idea that he had just helped set the stage for the greatest betrayal in galactic history. The Krevans had been planning their attack for months, and the human visit had given them exactly what they needed. Detailed information about human ships, human colonies, and human defenses. The trap was set. Soon it would be sprung, and the galaxy would learn something that the Krevans had forgotten. Humans might seek peace, but they were born from a world of predators. And predators, when cornered, became very dangerous indeed. 3 months had passed since Captain Daniel Harper returned from the Krevan homeworld. Life had returned to normal, or so it seemed. The Unity's Dawn was patrolling the outer colonies, checking on settlements and making sure everything was running smoothly. Trade with the Krevans had begun, and by all accounts everyone was happy. Then the invitation arrived. Ambassador John Miller received it directly from Queen Zira herself. The Krevans wanted to host a grand celebration on their homeworld, honoring the new friendship between humans and Krevans. It would be a massive event, with dignitaries from across the galaxy attending. The Galactic Council was thrilled and encouraged John to accept. It's a great honor, said the council representative, an elderly alien from the Therian species. The Krevans rarely host such events. This shows how much they value their relationship with humanity. John Miller stood in his office on Harmony Prime, reading the invitation again. Something about it made him uncomfortable, but he couldn't put his finger on what. Kelly Brooks, his aide, stood nearby with her arms crossed. You don't trust them, she said. It wasn't a question. I don't know, John admitted. Maybe I'm just being paranoid. The council has worked with the Krevans for centuries. They're trusted members of the galactic community. But they're building warships, Kelly said. A lot of them. The reports keep coming in from our scout teams. Every species has a military, John replied, but his voice lacked conviction. The council says it's their right. Kelly walked to the window looking out at the stars. Sir, I've been doing more research. In the past 3,000 years of council history, there have been only 2 wars. Both times they started with a celebration just like this one. An invitation, a gathering. And then what? And then one species tried to wipe out another. Both times the aggressor had been secretly building their military for months before the attack. John felt a chill run down his spine. Does the council know this pattern? They should. It's in their own historical records. But I think they've been peaceful for so long that they've forgotten what war looks like. They think it can't happen anymore. John made his decision. We're going, but we're going prepared. Contact Captain Harper. I want the Unity's Dawn as our escort, along with any other human ships in the area. 2 weeks later, John Miller boarded the diplomatic cruiser New Hope with 50 other human diplomats and officers. The ship was beautiful but lightly armed. It wasn't built for war. None of the human diplomatic vessels were. Captain Daniel Harper brought the Unity's Dawn alongside as an escort. He had also called in 2 other human ships that were nearby. The Guardian's Watch, a frigate commanded by Captain Steve Bennett, and the Explorer's Pride, a science vessel under Captain Laura Jensen. On the bridge of the Unity's Dawn, Commander Lisa Grant reviewed their tactical situation. 3 ships, she said to Daniel, against whatever the Crevens have in their home system. If something goes wrong, we're not going to be able to fight our way out. Nothing is going to go wrong, Daniel said, but he didn't sound sure. The council has representatives going to this celebration too. The Crevens wouldn't dare start something with the whole galaxy watching. Amy Peterson looked up from her tactical station. Captain, I'm still reading those unusual fleet movements we detected last month. The Creven military is more active than normal. Noted, Daniel said. But we have our orders. We escort the ambassador, we attend the celebration, and we come home. Simple. The journey to the Creven homeworld took 5 days. During that time, Commander Greg Palmer, who was commanding a scout ship called the Horizon's Edge far out on the frontier, sent an urgent message. His team had detected major Creven fleet movements near several human colonies. Daniel forwarded the message to Ambassador Miller, who forwarded it to the council. The response came back quickly. The Crevens had a right to move their fleets through their own territory. There was no cause for alarm. They're not listening, Lisa said after reading the council's response, or they don't want to see what's right in front of them. When they arrived at the Creven homeworld, they were greeted by dozens of Creven ships. The vessels were positioned in what looked like a defensive formation, but Captain Steve Bennett, commanding the Guardian's Watch, noticed something odd. Those aren't defensive positions, he said over the communication channel. They're surrounding us. If they wanted to, they could cut off all our escape routes. You're being paranoid, Steve, said Captain Laura Jensen from the Explorer's Pride. There are council representatives here too. Look, I can see the Therian diplomatic ship and the Vex observer vessel. This is a peaceful gathering. They landed on the planet and the celebration began. It was magnificent. The Crevens had prepared an enormous hall filled with food, music, and entertainment from a dozen different species. Ambassador Miller gave a speech about friendship and cooperation. Queen Zira responded with beautiful words about eternal partnership and shared prosperity. Kelly Brooks stood near the back of the hall, watching everything carefully. She noticed that many of the Creven military officers she had seen in previous visits were not present. When she mentioned this to Ambassador Miller, he told her she was worrying too much. That night, the human delegation was given luxurious quarters in the Creven diplomatic compound. Everyone was tired from the long day of celebration. They went to sleep feeling happy and accomplished. They had no idea what was coming. At exactly midnight Creven time, the attack began. Not just on the Creven homeworld, but across 12 human colonies simultaneously. Creven fleets that had been hiding in dark space, their engines cold and their systems silent, suddenly powered up and attacked. The colony of New Terra, home to 800 million humans, was hit first. Orbital defense platforms exploded before they could even activate their shields. Creven ships rained fire down on the cities below. People were sleeping when the attack came. They died in their beds, in their homes, with their families. Prosperity Station, a massive space station that served as a hub for human trade, was destroyed in the first 10 minutes. 300,000 people lived on that station. None of them survived. Green Valley, an agricultural colony that supplied food to a dozen human worlds, was bombarded until nothing lived on its surface. 2 billion people died there. In total, across 12 colonies, 3 billion humans died in the first hour of the attack. It was the single greatest loss of life in human history, and the humans had no warning. No chance to defend themselves, no time to evacuate. On the Creven homeworld, Ambassador John Miller woke to the sound of alarms. He rushed to the window of his quarters and saw Creven soldiers surrounding the diplomatic compound. His communicator was dead. The building's power was out except for emergency lights. Kelly Brooks met him in the hallway. "Sir, we're trapped. I tried to contact our ships, but all communications are jammed." In orbit above the planet, Captain Daniel Harper was having the worst moment of his life. The Unity's Dawn had detected the attacks on human colonies. They had received desperate distress calls from New Terra, from Prosperity Station, from Green Valley, and 9 other colonies. And then, one by one, the calls had stopped. "Captain, we're being targeted," Amy Peterson said, her voice tight with controlled panic. 30 Creven warships just decloaked around us. They've got weapons locked. "Where are the Guardian's Watch and Explorer's Pride?" Daniel demanded. "Here, sir." Captain Steve Bennett's voice came over the communication channel. "We're surrounded too. Laura's ship is taking fire. Her shields are down to 60%. Daniel made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Steve, Laura, get out of here. Jump to hyperspace right now. Warn Earth, tell them what happened." "What about you?" Steve asked. "I'm staying. I'm going to buy you time and try to get the ambassador out." "Daniel, you can't fight 30 ships," Lisa Grant said quietly. "I know," Daniel replied. "But I can give our people a chance to warn home." "Amy, give me everything we've got." "Lisa, prepare all escape pods." "Vincent, I need you to record everything we see and transmit it to Steve's ship. The people on Earth need to know what happened here." The Guardian's Watch and Explorer's Pride turned and jumped to hyperspace just as the Craven ships opened fire. The Unity's Dawn turned to face the enemy fleet alone. The battle lasted 18 minutes. Amy Peterson fired every weapon the ship had, targeting Creven ships with precision and skill. Lisa Grant led damage control teams through corridors that were burning and breaking apart. Vincent Cole transmitted every piece of data he could gather to the escaping human ships. And Daniel Harper stood on his bridge fighting until the very end. The Unity's Dawn destroyed 3 Creven ships and damaged 5 others before a fusion torpedo struck the engineering section. The explosion tore the ship in half. Emergency systems launched the escape pods automatically, but most were destroyed by Creven point defense weapons. Only one pod escaped. Inside was Amy Peterson, unconscious and badly injured but alive. Commander Greg Palmer's scout ship, the Horizon's Edge, had been watching from the edge of the system, recording everything. When the Unity's Dawn exploded, Palmer made the same choice Daniel had made. He turned his small ship around and ran, carrying with him the complete record of humanity's betrayal. On the Creven homeworld, Ambassador John Miller and his delegation. The news reached Earth 48 hours after the attacks began. Captain Steve Bennett and Captain Laura Jensen arrived with their ships, bringing survivors and the terrible recordings from Commander Greg Palmer. The images were played on every screen across every human colony and station that still existed. People watched in horror as their colonies burned. They saw the orbital bombardment of New Terra. They heard the last transmissions from Prosperity Station as it broke apart. They witnessed Captain Daniel Harper's final stand aboard the Unity's Dawn, and they learned that 3 billion of their brothers and sisters were dead. Earth had never seen such unity. Every government, every nation, every group that had ever disagreed about anything suddenly spoke with one voice. The message was simple. This would not stand. Fleet Admiral Ryan Carter was in a meeting within an hour of receiving the news. He was 60 years old, a career military officer who had commanded fleets for 20 years. He sat in the Admiralty building with General Marcus Flynn of the Marine Corps and Director Nina Shaw of Human Intelligence. "The Galactic Council has called an emergency session," Ryan said, his voice hard. "The Creven Queen is going to present her case. She's claiming we were a threat that needed to be eliminated." "And the Council?" Marcus asked. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with scars from a dozen conflicts in his youth. "The Council is debating," Nina Shaw said with disgust. She was younger than the two men, only 42, but she had risen through the intelligence services by being smarter and more ruthless than anyone else. They're forming committees. They're discussing whether the Kravan actions were justified. They're talking about sending fact-finding missions. Fact-finding missions, Marcus repeated slowly. 3 billion of our people are dead, and they want to form a committee. Ryan Carter stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the lights of the city. Somewhere down there, families were learning that their loved ones on the colonies were never coming home. Children were learning they would never see their parents again. And the Galactic Council wanted to debate. We're done with the Council, Ryan said. Humanity stands alone now. If they won't help us, we'll do this ourselves. What are we talking about? Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. War, Ryan said simply. Total war. We're going to mobilize every ship, every soldier, every resource we have, and we're going to make the Krevans wish they had never heard of Earth. The orders went out within the hour. Every shipyard in human space converted to wartime production. Civilian factories started making weapons and ammunition. Mining colonies that had been sending metals to build habitats started building warships instead. The entire human civilization, all 35 billion people living across 50 colonies and stations, turned their attention to one goal: revenge. President Caroline White addressed humanity 3 days after the attacks. She was 55, had been a senator before becoming president, and was known for her calm and measured approach to problems. But there was nothing calm in her voice now. They came to us as friends, she said, her face broadcast to every human in the galaxy. We welcomed them. We traded with them. We trusted them. And they betrayed that trust in the worst way possible. 3 billion of our people are dead. 12 of our colonies are gone. And the Galactic Council, the organization we joined seeking peace, has done nothing. She paused, and the camera showed her eyes. They were filled with cold fury. The Krevans say we are too dangerous, too aggressive to be allowed to exist. They wanted to see us as the monsters from our past. Let us show them why those monsters never lost a war. Let us show them what humanity becomes when you kill our children, destroy our homes, and murder our people. We did not start this war, but by God, we will finish it. The speech became known as the Declaration of Hell. It was the moment humanity stopped trying to fit into the galactic community and started being what they truly were. Survivors who had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain by being smarter, tougher, and more adaptable than anything else on their planet. Dr. Sophie Turner was given unlimited resources to develop new weapons. She was 38, had 3 doctorates in physics and engineering, and had been designing peaceful technologies for space exploration. Now she turned her brilliant mind to destruction. The Galactic Council has rules about weapons, she told Admiral Carter in a meeting. Regulations about what you can and can't use in war. Limits on destructive force. Guidelines about targeting. We never signed those regulations, Ryan pointed out. Exactly, Sophie said with a cold smile, because the Council thought we were too primitive to need them. They thought we would never be in a position to make weapons that could threaten anyone. They were wrong. Working with engineers like Paul Anderson and Maria Lopez, Sophie designed weapon systems that would make the Council's regulations look quaint. Nanite swarms that could disable enemy technology. Fusion warheads that could crack asteroids. Biological weapons tailored to specific alien species. And more, much more, that would be revealed only when they were used in battle. Commander Greg Palmer was promoted to captain and given command of the first new warship to come off the production lines. It was called the Retribution, and it was designed for one purpose: killing Kravan ships. Palmer stood on the bridge of his new ship, looking at his crew. Many of them were survivors from the colonies that had been destroyed. Lieutenant Jake Morris had lost his entire family on New Terra. Corporal Helen Davis had watched from her transport ship as Green Valley burned, unable to help the people dying below, and at the tactical station was Amy Peterson. She had been pulled from the escape pod by a human rescue ship, barely alive. She had spent 2 weeks in a hospital recovering from her injuries. The doctors had wanted her to take more time, to rest and heal. She had refused. Amy wanted to go back to war. "Welcome to the Retribution," Palmer said to his crew. "Our mission is simple. We're going to take back our colonies. We're going to rescue our people. And we're going to make the Krevans pay for every single life they took." The crew didn't cheer. They didn't shout or make noise. They simply nodded, their faces hard and determined. This wasn't a job to them, it was personal. 3 months after the attacks, humanity launched Operation Hellfire. 20 warships led by the Retribution jumped into the new Terra system. The Krevans had left a garrison fleet of 15 ships to hold the colony. They were expecting a diplomatic protest, maybe a few skirmishes. They were not expecting what arrived. "Deploy the nanites," Captain Palmer ordered. Dr. Turner's first gift to the war effort spread through space like invisible clouds. The microscopic machines were programmed to recognize Krevan technology and disable it while leaving human systems untouched. Within minutes, every Krevan ship in the system found their computers failing, their weapons offline, and their shields collapsing. "Their ships are dead in space," Amy Peterson reported. "They're trying to restart their systems, but the nanites are replicating faster than they can purge them." "Launch assault shuttles," Palmer ordered. "Take the ships intact if possible. Kill anyone who resists." Lieutenant Jake Morris led the Marine assault on the Krevan flagship. The Krevan crew tried to fight back with handheld weapons, but they were no match for human Marines who fought with rage in their hearts. Jake personally captured the Krevan commander and dragged him to a communication station. "Send a message to Queen Zira," Jake said, his voice cold. "Tell her New Terra is ours again. Tell her we're coming for the rest." The battle for New Terra lasted 48 hours. The human forces showed no mercy. When Krevan ground troops tried to hide in civilian buildings, the Marines burned the buildings down. When Krevan ships tried to retreat, human fighters hunted them down and destroyed them. Not a single Krevan was allowed to escape. But New Terra was just the beginning. Admiral Ryan Carter had developed a strategy that the Galactic Council had never seen before, because they had been at peace for so long. It was called Total War, and it meant that everything and everyone supporting the enemy was a valid target. Operation Reaper began 2 weeks after New Terra was liberated. Captain Steve Bennett, commanding the upgraded Guardian's Watch, led a task force of fast attack ships into Krevan territory. Their mission was not to hold ground or capture colonies. Their mission was to destroy everything that kept the Krevan military running. "Wolfpack tactics," Steve explained to his captains. Frank Miller commanded the destroyer Iron Will, and Patricia Nguyen led the stealth corvette Shadow Dancer. "We hit their supply convoys. We destroy their fuel depots. We target their shipyards and manufacturing plants. We make it impossible for them to sustain their fleet." The Krevans had never fought an enemy like this. The Council's idea of war was fleets meeting in open space, fighting honorable battles with rules about targeting and conduct. Steve Bennett's ships ignored all those rules. They ambushed convoys in hyperspace. They mined shipping lanes. They launched missiles from stealth and disappeared before the Krevans could respond. Within a month, the Krevan military was struggling to supply their fleets. Ships ran out of fuel. Ammunition became scarce. New construction slowed to a crawl because the shipyards were burning. Captain Laura Jensen took her science vessel, the rebuilt Explorer's Pride, on a different kind of mission. The warning came from a deep space monitoring station near Jupiter. A young ensign named Chris Martin was the first to see it on his sensors. 300 Krevan warships moving in perfect formation, dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. "Contact Admiral Carter immediately," his supervisor ordered. "Tell him the Krevans are here," but Ryan Carter already knew. He had been expecting this for weeks. Every strategic simulation his team had run showed that the Krevans would eventually try to strike at Earth itself. It was what he would have done in their position. Cut off the head and the body dies. The Krevans had made one critical mistake, though. They thought Earth would be lightly defended. They thought most of the human fleet would be scattered across the colonies, fighting on distant fronts. They were wrong. Ryan stood in the command center deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean watching the tactical display. Every ship in the human fleet was shown as a blue dot. Every Krevan ship was red, and right now there was a massive cloud of red dots heading straight for the blue marble of Earth. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter. Execute Defense Plan Omega. Show them what happens when you come to our home." 300 Krevan ships. It was the largest space fleet assembled in 1,000 years. Queen Zira herself was watching from her throne room, confident that this attack would break human resistance. She had sent her best commanders, her most powerful vessels, and enough firepower to destroy a dozen planets. The Krevans advanced through the asteroid belt, moving steadily toward Earth. Their sensors showed nothing unusual. Some scattered human ships near Mars, a few patrol vessels, standard defensive satellites, nothing that could stop a fleet this size. They were wrong. When the Crevan fleet reached the orbit of Mars, everything changed. Asteroids that had been floating peacefully in space suddenly lit up with weapons fire. They weren't asteroids at all. They were weapons platforms, disguised and hidden, waiting for exactly this moment. Director Nina Shaw had overseen their construction personally. Thousands of hidden bases, each one packed with missiles and railguns and fusion torpedoes. The Crevans flew right into the trap. "Fire everything," Ryan ordered calmly. Space erupted with light. Missiles streaked out from every direction. Railgun rounds, moving at incredible speeds, tore through Crevan shields like paper. Fusion warheads detonated in massive explosions that consumed entire ships. The Crevan formation broke apart in confusion. They tried to return fire, but they couldn't see their enemies. The weapons platforms were too small, too scattered, and kept changing position. Every time the Crevans locked onto one platform, it would go silent while 3 others opened fire from different angles. "They're trying to push through to Earth," Amy Peterson reported from her station aboard the Retribution. Captain Palmer's ship was part of the main fleet hidden behind the moon. "Let them come," Ryan said. "Spring the second trap." The Crevans, having lost nearly 50 ships to the weapons platforms, decided to make a run for Earth itself. If they could reach the planet, they could threaten it directly, force the humans to pull back or watch their homeworld burn. 250 ships, still a massive force, accelerated toward Earth. They passed the moon, their weapons charging, ready to rain destruction down on the planet that had caused them so much trouble. And then the moon opened fire. The entire human defense fleet had been hiding on the far side of the moon, powered down, invisible to Crevan sensors. 50 warships, including the Retribution, the Guardian's Watch, and Admiral Carter's flagship, the Defiance, suddenly appeared and attacked with everything they had. But that wasn't all. The moon itself, humanity's ancient companion in space, had been turned into a fortress. Bases hidden in craters unleashed swarms of missiles. Railguns built into the lunar surface fired with devastating accuracy. Energy weapons, powered by fusion reactors buried deep underground, cut through the darkness. Captain Palmer gave the order on the Retribution. "All weapons fire at will. Target their command ships first." Jake Morris, now a full lieutenant, coordinated the Marine assault shuttles. "Any Crevan ship that's disabled, board it. Take prisoners if they surrender. Kill them if they don't." Amy Peterson worked her tactical console with cold efficiency. She had died once already, or come close enough that it didn't matter. She had watched Captain Harper sacrifice himself to save others. Now she was going to make the Crevans pay for every second of pain she had endured. "Targeting their flagship," she said. "Firing main cannons." The Retribution's weapons hammered the Crevan flagship. Shields flickered and failed. The hull broke open. Atmosphere vented into space, and then a fusion torpedo, carefully aimed by Amy, struck the ship's reactor. The explosion was visible from Earth. The Battle of Earth lasted 6 hours. It was brutal, desperate, and utterly one-sided. The Crevans had expected to fight a defensive fleet protecting a planet. Instead, they found themselves in a killbox, surrounded by enemies, with no escape route and no reinforcements. Captain Steve Bennett led the Guardian's Watch in hunting down ships that tried to retreat. His crew had been fighting for 3 months straight, hitting Crevan supply lines and learning every weakness in their ships. Now they use that knowledge with surgical precision. "Their engines are vulnerable on the port side," Steve told his weapons officer. "Hit them there and they can't jump to hyperspace." One by one, Crevan ships were crippled and destroyed. Some tried to surrender, broadcasting distress signals and powering down their weapons. Captain Laura Jensen, commanding the Explorer's Pride, was assigned to accept surrenders and take prisoners. "Any ship that surrenders, disable their systems and put a security team aboard," Laura ordered. "Anyone who surrenders and then tries to fight, destroy them immediately." But most Crevan ships didn't surrender. They fought to the last, firing until their weapons went dark and their ships broke apart. Queen Zira had trained her soldiers well. They were brave and determined, it didn't matter. Human ships designed for war and crewed by people fighting for their survival tore through the Crevan fleet like wolves through sheep. Admiral Ryan Carter watched from the Defiance as the last Crevan ship was destroyed. 6 hours of battle and not a single Crevan ship had escaped. 300 ships had entered the Sol system. 300 ships were now debris floating in space. Human losses were minimal. 12 ships damaged, 3 destroyed, and about 800 personnel killed. Against a force 10 times larger, humanity had won a complete victory. Ryan opened a channel that broadcast on all Craven frequencies, including the ones that would reach Queen Zira on the Craven homeworld. His face appeared on every Craven screen across their empire. "You wanted to exterminate us," Ryan said, his voice cold and hard. "You attacked our homes. You killed our children. You murdered 3 billion of our people while they slept. And now you sent your fleet to destroy our homeworld." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You failed. Your fleet is destroyed. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon you sent here is gone. And now we're going to show you what extinction really looks like. We're coming for you, Queen Zira. We're coming for your worlds, your people, and your throne, and we won't stop until the Craven threat is eliminated forever." The message ended, and across the galaxy, every species that had been watching the battle fell silent. The humans had just destroyed the largest military fleet in modern history. They had done it defending their homeworld, and they had made it look easy. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. The representatives were in chaos. Some wanted to intervene, to stop the humans before they did something terrible. Others argued that the Cravens had brought this on themselves. Still others simply watched in fear, wondering if humanity would turn on them next. Ambassador John Miller stood before the council, and for the first time since the war began, he smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "The council has been debating this war for 3 months," he said. "You've formed committees. You've discussed laws and regulations. You've talked about right and wrong. And while you talked, we fought. While you debated, we died. While you held meetings, we rebuilt. And now we've won the largest space battle in your history." He looked around at the alien faces. "We don't need your permission anymore," John said. "We don't need your approval. We're going to finish this war, and we're going to do it our way. Stay out of our path and you'll be fine. Try to stop us and you'll learn the same lesson the Cravens learned. Humans are very good at war." The council had no response. What could they say? Humanity had proven that it was the dominant military power in the galaxy. The age of council authority was over. On Earth, President Caroline White addressed her people again. The message was broadcast to every human colony, every ship, every station that still stood. "Today we defended our home," she said. "We showed the galaxy that Earth cannot be threatened. But this war is not over. The Cravens still hold our people prisoner. They still occupy our colonies. And their queen still lives, believing she was justified in her genocide. Her eyes were hard as steel. We're going to finish this. We're going to rescue our people. We're going to retake our colonies. And we're going to make sure that the Cravens never threaten anyone again. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever." In the shipyards around Earth and Mars, new vessels were already being built. The victory? The fleet that gathered for the invasion of the Craven homeworld was the largest force humanity had ever assembled. 300 warships newly built or upgraded from civilian vessels, 50 assault carriers filled with Marines, support ships carrying supplies, ammunition, and the weapons that Dr. Sophie Turner had been developing in secret. Captain Palmer stood on the bridge of the Retribution, looking at the tactical display showing every ship in the fleet. He thought about Captain Daniel Harper, who had died in this same system months ago. Harper had been trying to save people, trying to do the right thing. Now Palmer was here to finish the job, but his methods would be very different. "All ships report ready," Amy Peterson said from her tactical station. She looked different now, harder. The young officer who had been excited to meet aliens was gone, replaced by someone who had seen too much death and decided to make the enemy pay. "Fleet Admiral Carter is on the line," Lisa Grant reported. Ryan Carter's face appeared on the screen. The old admiral looked tired. 3 months of constant war had aged him, but his eyes were still sharp and determined. "Captain Palmer, you have operational command of the invasion force. Your mission is to capture the Craven homeworld, rescue our people, and bring Queen Zira to justice. The council has sent messages demanding we show restraint. I told them where they could put their demands." Palmer smiled coldly. "Understood, sir. We'll get our people back. One more thing," Ryan said. "The Cravens have fortified their homeworld. Intelligence suggests they have over 100 ships defending the planet, plus ground-based weapons and millions of soldiers. They know you're coming and they're ready to fight." "Good," Palmer replied. "We'd be disappointed if this was easy." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, traveling the distance to the Craven homeworld in 3 days. During that time, Lieutenant Jake Morris briefed his Marines on what they would face on the ground. The Krevans are insectoids, he told the assembled troops. They live in hives underground. Their soldiers are tough, they're fast, and they fight with no fear of death. But they're also predictable. They follow patterns, they obey orders without question, and they can't adapt when things don't go according to plan. Corporal Helen Davis, now a lieutenant herself, added, "We've been fighting them for 3 months. We know their tactics, we know their weaknesses, and we know that they don't expect us to fight as dirty as we're willing to fight. The Marines were ready. Many of them were survivors from the destroyed colonies. They had lost families, friends, entire communities. This wasn't just a mission for them. It was personal. When the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Krevan home system, they were immediately detected. Alarms rang out across the planet. Queen Zira, sitting in her throne room deep beneath the surface, received the reports with growing fear. "How many ships?" she demanded. "Over 300, my queen," her military commander replied. "It's their entire fleet." "Then we'll destroy their entire fleet," Zira said, trying to sound confident. "Send everything we have. Stop them before they reach the planet." The Krevan Defense Fleet, 120 ships, moved to intercept the human invaders. It was a respectable force, well-trained and well-equipped. In any normal conflict, it would have been enough, but this wasn't a normal conflict. "Deploy the nanite clouds," Palmer ordered. The invisible weapons spread through space again, just as they had at New Terra. But this time, the Krevans were ready. Their ships had been upgraded with shielding against the nanites, and purging systems that could clear the microscopic machines before they caused too much damage. "Their shields are adapting," Amy reported. "The nanites are only 50% effective." "Then we do this the old-fashioned way," Palmer said. "All ships attack Formation Delta. Target their heavy cruisers first. Let's even the odds. The space battle was fierce. The Krevans fought with desperate courage, knowing that if they failed, their homeworld would fall. Human ships took damage and several were destroyed. But the humans had better tactics, better weapons, and most importantly, they had been fighting non-stop for 3 months while the Krevan fleet had been sitting in defensive positions. Captain Steve Bennett led a squadron of fast attack ships around the Krevan flank. His Guardian's Watch, along with Frank Miller's Iron Will and Patricia Nguyen's Shadow Dancer, hammered the Krevan rear formations. The Krevans tried to respond, but they were fighting on too many fronts at once. Captain Laura Jensen's Explorer's Pride stayed back from the main battle, coordinating drone swarms. Thousands of small automated fighters, each one armed with missiles and controlled by her ship's computers, swarmed over Krevan vessels like insects. The Krevans found themselves fighting enemies they couldn't effectively target, wearing down their defenses while the larger human ships moved in for the kill. After 4 hours of battle, the Krevan defense fleet was broken. 70 ships were destroyed, 30 were crippled, and the remaining 20 retreated to orbit around the planet itself, hoping the ground-based weapons would help them hold off the invasion. "Begin orbital bombardment," Palmer ordered. "Target military installations only. We're not here to genocide the Krevan people. We're here to end their ability to make war." The human fleet opened fire on the planet below. Fusion missiles struck Krevan military bases. Railgun rounds destroyed weapons factories. Energy beams cut through the shields protecting command centers. The bombardment was precise and devastating. Deep in her underground throne room, Queen Zira felt the ground shake with each impact. Her advisors were panicking, suggesting surrender, suggesting negotiation, but Zira knew the humans too well now. They hadn't come for negotiation. "Where are the human prisoners?" she demanded. "In the detention complex, my queen. On the North Continent." "Prepare them for execution," Zira ordered. "If we can't win, at least we can take their ambassador and his people with us." But Zira had made a mistake. She had sent the order on an encrypted channel, believing it was secure. She didn't know that Director Nina Shaw's intelligence service had broken every Krevan code weeks ago. The message was intercepted immediately. "They're going to kill the prisoners," Nina reported to Palmer. "We have maybe an hour before they execute Ambassador Miller and the others." Palmer didn't hesitate. "Jake, take your team down now. Fast insertion, maximum speed. Get our people out." Lieutenant Jake Morris and his special operations team were in their assault shuttle within minutes. 20 Marines, the best fighters humanity had, dropped toward the planet at maximum velocity. They hit the atmosphere hard, the shuttle glowing red from friction, and landed near the detention complex with a crash that shook the ground. The Crevan guards never knew what hit them. Jake's team moved through the complex like shadows, using night vision, silenced weapons, and brutal efficiency. They found Ambassador John Miller and the surviving 32 members of his delegation in a large cell, already being prepared for execution. "Took you long enough," John said with a weak smile as Jake kicked open the cell door. "Sorry, sir. Traffic was terrible," Jake replied, helping the ambassador to his feet. Getting out was harder than getting in. Crevan reinforcements were arriving, and the Marines found themselves in a running firefight through the complex's corridors. Helen Davis held the rear guard, her rifle cutting down Crevans who tried to pursue. 3 Marines were wounded in the escape, but all of them, along with all the prisoners, made it back to the shuttle. They launched just as Crevan aircraft arrived to attack. The shuttle's pilot, a young woman named Carol West, flew like her life depended on it because it did. She dodged missiles, outran fighters, and got the shuttle back to the Retribution with 3 minutes of fuel remaining. "Prisoners secured," Jake reported to Palmer. "Ambassador Miller is safe." Palmer felt something release in his chest. They had saved Harper's people. They had finished his mission. Now came the final act. "Take us down to the surface," Palmer ordered. "We're going after the Queen." The Retribution, along with 20 other ships, descended through the atmosphere. It was dangerous making large warships operate in planetary gravity, but Palmer wanted to make a statement. The Marines deployed in massive numbers, supported by tanks, artillery, and air support. The battle for the Crevan homeworld lasted 2 weeks. It was brutal urban combat, fighting through hive tunnels and underground complexes. The Crevans defended their home with everything they had, but human tactics were overwhelming. Flame weapons cleared tunnels. Explosives collapsed hive structures, and slowly, methodically, the Marines pushed deeper into the planet. Lieutenant Jake Morris personally led the final assault on the Royal Hive. His team fought room by room, corridor by corridor, until they reached the throne room where Queen Zero waited with her personal guard. The Crevan warriors fought to the last, defending their queen with suicidal courage. But courage wasn't enough against Marines who had lost everything and wanted revenge. When the last guard fell, Jake stood before Queen Zero with his rifle pointed at her head. "You're under arrest," he said simply, "for genocide, for war crimes, and for being really bad at starting wars." Queen Zero was brought before a human military tribunal. Not the Galactic Council, who had done nothing to help. Not some neutral third party, a human court, where human judges would decide her fate based on human law.